couple of things I wanted to talk about. If you don't track an activity and it doesn't go on Strava, does it really count? Yes or no? Well, obviously it does count, but in the scheme of things, it doesn't count because it's not recorded. Anyway, all jokes aside, over the last 5 years or so, I've been using a few different things to track workouts, mainly obviously a GPS watch or a smartwatch, whatever you want to call them. And I've gone through a few now. I always used a very simple tide watch for surfing. No GPS, it was just a basic digital watch. It was almost with like a stainless steel dive case. I had those for many years, from when I finished school all the way through until the last sort of couple of years. But when I sort of got pretty serious in tracking activities and running and all sorts of stuff, I actually from before that I would essentially use my phone. I would run with my phone in my hand and use an app. I don't know if it exists anymore, but it's probably merged into a couple of things. But I used to use Map My Run. It's kind of like the Nike app or the Strava app or whatever it is. It's just a recording device, and it's just a GPS. It just tracks your run, your time, your pace. Never had a heart rate monitor on it or anything like that. And then ended up getting a few years back now, ended up getting my first GPS watch, which was a Rip Curl GPS watch, and it was mainly just for tracking for surfing. At the time I was doing a lot of like training with the surf club, doing all sorts of like swimming and paddling and different activities, and I would also use it for my run instead of having to carry my phone, but obviously it just didn't have the same GPS and data tracking capabilities. Anyway, long story short, I bought my first Garmin watch back in 2020 when I started doing a few short distance triathlons. And there's a couple of things I've learnt since stepping into that that product range, I would say. And over that time, I've had a Garmin Fenix 6X, a Garmin Fenix 7, a Garmin Fenix 7 Pro Sapphire, and then the current watch I have now, which is the Garmin Forerunner 945. So I've gone through a few of them, and there's a few things that I've learnt along the way. Number one is get a watch that fits, that's nice and comfortable, especially when you're doing running activities. I made the biggest mistake by buying the Garmin Fenix 6X, which is essentially the biggest sized watch. So it was a 53 millimeter watch face, and it weighed a ton, and it just flicked around on my wrist. It was the most annoying thing, and I was too stubborn to swallow my pride and go back and get another one and change it out, and I had that watch for ages. So I had that watch for nearly like 18 months to 2 years or so. I mean, I'll list out the pros for that watch. The pros were that it, the battery life was absolutely insane on GPS mode and heart rate mode. Absolutely insane. Just lasted forever. I wouldn't have to charge it for weeks, and I'd be using it nearly every day for anywhere from half an hour to an hour and a half of activity tracking. Another pro was that it was very accurate. It had a good heart rate monitor, a wrist-based heart rate monitor. At the time, I wasn't using any chest straps or anything like that. Other things, it was like super durable. Like, I spent a lot of time in the ocean, exposure to salt water, all those sorts of things, and it held up amazingly. Yeah, it was exceptional for that stuff. It had a really nice face, but yeah, there's the biggest drawback for me was just the size of it. And if I had to choose to go back and buy another, start again, buying in the Phoenix range, I would have gotten the smaller face. So I think majority of the Phoenix ranges, they come in 3 different watch face sizes. Yeah, I think they come in like a 42, a 47, and a 52 or 53 millimeter. So you can imagine the difference, in terms of weight. The only thing is, obviously, you're just sacrificing, battery life or battery size, right? So anyway, that was the Phoenix. That was the Phoenix 6. What happened there was another huge thing that I would pass on in terms of advice for going into the Garmin range and buying their products is, although it can take a long time, it can be like a lengthy time process. Their support services are quite exceptional. Even if your watch is kind of past the warranty stage, they are like super good at just replacing the watch like for like if anything was to happen to it. If it's a fault within the device, they almost 9 times out of 10, if you contact them on the phone and then follow it up with an email, they'll create like a what would you call it, like a reference number or like a fault reference number, and then you go through the process of sending the receipt, sending the fault, trying to troubleshoot it, all those sorts of things, and then 9 times out of 10 they will literally just replace your product like for like. If they don't have it in stock, they'll come up with other options in terms of they'll come up with other like for like products, and sometimes you might be out of pocket. Say you might have to go to like the next, so for example for the Phoenix you might have to go to the next the next product or whatever the case may be. But no, they're really good at helping, and they're really good at helping you troubleshoot. Obviously the website's really good for that with all the information, but if you just want to get straight to the point and just you just call them, get a part number, tell them the issue, and they'll 9 times out of 10 they just come back and help you through that process and replace it like for like. The next product, because of a fault, so what happened with the Phoenix 6X is it wasn't a button initially, but it was a mixture of a couple of things. The watch kind of shat itself. It kind of like, I wouldn't say it died or anything. It just crashed on me a couple of times, and it wouldn't. This was way late in the piece. The watch was at least like 2 years old, and I'd been flogging it nearly every day. It just started shutting down, and one of the down buttons didn't work, so I couldn't actually save any activities. Anyway, I ended up getting a refund to the retail price. So I got refunded the cost of the watch, and then I just went back into store. They refunded me, and then I ended up choosing, because I wanted to replace the watch, I ended up just going straight into the Phoenix 7 range, which is the mid face, which is the 47 millimeter. And so that's how I got into the Phoenix 7 range. Again, looking back on it, that Phoenix 7, it was just still too big and heavy. I got the basic stainless steel model, which was, I believe, a 47 millimeter face, although it being a 47 millimeter face and being a lot smaller and lighter in weight than the 6X, it was still just it still bounced around. It was still loose around my wrist, so yeah, I wish I would have just gone straight into the 7S range, which is the 42 millimeter face, which would have been a bit better. Unfortunately, the same thing happened actually with the Phoenix 7. I think it was the up button instead stopped working. I tried everything, soaking it in soap, dishwashing liquid, all those sorts of things, and it just never worked. So anyway, I ended up contacting them again, got a like for like. They offered me a like for like replacement, but they didn't have that product in stock. So they ended up offering me the Phoenix 7 same size face, but in the Pro Sapphire. That was the only thing they had in stock. So I ended up like for liking it for that, which was obviously a step up. That was like that's essentially the best model in the 7 range, is the Pro Sapphire Solar, I believe it was. Again, couldn't believe it. Had the watch for about maybe 5 to 6 weeks, and one of the buttons just didn't work again. It was extremely frustrating process, just because it was another brand new watch, and I went through the whole phase again. Anyway, here I am sitting with I've gone through a couple of these watches. At the time we were actually overseas in Japan, so I actually had to ship the watch back home, and I got through to their support team and just said, look, this is quite frustrating now. Can I just go straight to a refund? So they ended up refunding me the full amount that I purchased for that watch, which was the original watch. So exact same process. So essentially, I wasn't out of pocket per se. At the time, so then I didn't really have a watch for a couple of weeks. At the time though, we were in Japan, and my partner Maggie had this watch, which is the Forerunner 945, but she hadn't been using it. She wasn't wearing it at all, and I ended up just buying it off her. She wasn't using it at all, so I decided, oh look, I'll jump into the Forerunner range. This was a little bit of an older product. I don't know if you can actually buy this off the shelf anymore. She'd had it for about 2.5 years, I'd say, when I got it. She was using it like quite consistently when we were back in Australia for a long time, but never, I wouldn't say, but wasn't using it, I guess, like I was. And just because we were in Japan and stuff, it just didn't work out. She just didn't really like wearing it and wasn't using it. So ended up buying it off her, and yeah, probably one of the best decisions. I had to swallow a bit of humble pie. There's the main two products in Garmin's range in terms of like smartwatch, multi-sport GPS tracking watches, is obviously the Phoenix ranges and the Forerunner ranges. The Forerunner ranges are a lot more tailored towards, runners who really just only run, even though they are still waterproof at 50 meters and stuff. The Phoenixes are waterproof to 100 meters, so they're a lot more quote unquote durable than the others. Than the Forerunners. Anyway, I had to swallow a bit of humble pie, I've never looked back. I don't think I'll ever go back into the Phoenix range again. This watch is so light. It's a 47mm face. It's just so much lighter than the rest of them. They don't bounce around. It's almost like it's not even on my wrist. It does everything I need. All I need it to do is just track my activities. There's a couple of sports that it doesn't have in-house like the Phoenix does. There's a couple of things it also doesn't have in terms of like training readiness and all the other specific data like HRV and all that stuff. I used to get really into all that data, but I just don't care about that stuff anymore. All I want is a very functional watch that I can use day to day, every day. It's reliable, the buttons continue to work, it turns on, it's pretty decent in battery. That's all I care about. It's just simplicity. And it just took me a couple of years to realize that, I didn't really care about a touchscreen. I didn't care about, you know, knowing my HRV values. I didn't care about all of the crazy specific tracking metrics that, you know, some of these other smartwatches can do. This model of the Forerunner, and, you know, there's so many other models. You can go like top of the range, which is like, there's a new 970 out, and that's just like a crazy, you know, for what that watch can do in terms of multi-sport tracking and metrics and data and information and stuff. When you're not training is can be handy, but I just don't like getting jumped into all the weeds and getting all confused by all that information. So yeah, it's going strong. I you know, touch wood, it keeps on giving. But yeah, I've absolutely loved having this watch. It doesn't have the same like high tech as all the other ones, like in terms of the heart, like it's a little bit of a dated heart rate monitor, but I don't really care about that stuff. Because, you know, I've spent the money on a good chest strap, so, you know, heart rate data quality during activities is captured using that piece of you know, using that piece of equipment, which, you know, doesn't even, it's just super easy to throw it on every time you go and train, and it just captures it with enormous accuracy. So yeah, I've been stoked. Yeah, a lot of pros with this watch. If you just want, you know, if you just want a simple running watch that you can use like swimming as well, or, you know, even for, you know, tracking bike rides and all that sort of stuff. It doesn't track my surfing. It doesn't have like a specific surfing app or activity type, but I don't really care. I just use like a track me, you know, it's just a different activity. It's just a track me. It captures all the, you know, distances and time. That's all I really care about. I don't care about the, you know, how many waves I caught, how long was each wave, what were the top speeds for each of those waves, blah blah blah. Like, I used to get all caught up in that, but it doesn't really worry me as long as I'm enjoying the you know, the session. So all in all, the big things I've learnt are try the watch on first. Make sure it's comfy and fits right. You know, Garmin's got an enormous range in terms of, you know, even from the base model, the super cheap ones that still do very basic GPS tracking, they're unreal for you know, for all that sort of stuff. But yeah, just get it. Make sure you try it on, check that it doesn't bounce around and it slides around. It's so annoying. You're wearing it every, you know, if you're like me, you wear it every second of the day. You know, you use it to, you know, you sleep in it, you know, you use it for everything in daily life. You want it to be comfortable. The second thing is, if you do ever have any faults, Garmin are sweet with like helping you through that process. The recommendation with that process is, I would obviously in the first instance try and troubleshoot it as best you can yourself. Their website's got heaps of information on there for all of that sort of stuff. Try and troubleshoot it in the first instance. If you don't have any luck, just call the Australian or New Zealand support line, or wherever you are, or whatever country you are. Call the number, just explain your issue, send them, then they'll send you and then they'll request you to send them an email. Always follow up with everything in writing. Send your receipt, send your product, you know, information, explain the fault, take photos, try and, if you can, even get a video. That's also super helpful. And then they'll either ask you to like post it back to their factory, or take it into the store and they'll do the swap like for like, or the refund when you drop it to the store. It depends. They explain all of that stuff. The third thing is weigh up what you want to get out of the tracking device, versus, you know, how much you want to spend, because you can get every box ticked in terms of like what you want out of the watch, for what it can do. If you get all those boxes ticked and you only need to spend, you know, and the device is only $200 or $300, just buy that device. Don't get suckered into spending $1,800 on the Phoenix X Pro when you're not going to use any of the functions. You know, even when I had the Phoenixes, I turned all the notifications off. I turned all of that crap off. I just didn't use any of those, you know, those crazy functions that a smartwatch does, because it's not, for me, it's not practical. It was almost like a distraction. You know, that's what my phone's for. And the point of exercising for me is it's not about being distracted and having that device. That's my downtime. I purposely exercise and train without my phone on me. That's the point. It's a detachment, especially when you go running or surfing. Like, obviously you can't take it surfing, but yeah, it kind of detracts. So yeah, so the third thing I would say is really weigh up, you know, how much you want to spend and what do you want to get out of it. If you want to get all of those bells and whistles and all of the fancy smartwatch, you know, capabilities, by all means spend $2,000 on a thing that wraps around your wrist. You know, I take no offense in what people want and what they want to get out of it. But yeah, for me, I kind of had to swallow a bit of, you know, I had to swallow a bit of pride, and I was super humbled. I realized that something simple like this watch, which, you know, I think brand new back 3 or 4 years ago, this watch was like on sale for like $400 or $500, whereas the Phoenix Pro Sapphire, the Phoenix 7 Pro Sapphire, whatever it was, I think that watch retailed at nearly $1,700 at the same time. And it was like, well, you know, fundamentally, what do I want to get out of the watch? So that's a third piece of advice. I don't know if I have any other advice. I think they're the main three. You know, make sure it fits. If you have any problems with Garmin, are amazing for that. And, you know, weigh up when you do go to select a product, weigh up how much you want to spend versus, you know, what functionality you want to get out of the device. So yeah, that's my experience in tracking devices and watches and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I've had a great experience with Garmin. I can't speak highly. You know, I've had issues. You're going to have issues with any product. It doesn't matter what brand you buy, you're always going to have issues. But mine has been super seamless, and I'll 100% stick with the Forerunner range out of the two main tracking devices. There's a bunch of other ones that Garmin have, you know, for ultra running and you know, crazy different adventure activities that you just need like huge battery life. But yeah, that's definitely my experience. Don't know if this any of this sort of helps at all, but I mean, that's just my experience. So good luck out there. Try a few devices.